Hey, this is Bor from PeachWeb, and today I'll be explaining how to use anchors. And without further ado, let's dive in. So, to get started, I have this project which I've set it earlier, and this is basically an replica of an Apple website. And as you can see, I have UI anchors in the timeline. So, I've already set the anchors for these, but let's go through it. So this is our project. And if we check the preview, basically this is how it looks like. So we have this animation, we get closer and we have this UI, and then we have a 2D UI. And if we scroll down, we have the camera animation, and we have a transition here, which is basically showing the screen. And then we have the rotation and CTA. So this is the basic website. And let's go back to our UI timeline. And I have some fixed elements, so let's just hide them so we can see or seem better. So our first anchor is set to 10% because our animation is basically starting off like this. But if we start from 10%, it should be it should be looking like this. And I didn't want to start it like this. Instead, I wanted to start it like this. So this is our first anchor set to 10%. And then we have a block here, which is set to 300 dVH. And we have our first UI here, which is set to fixed. And the second anchor is 20%. And this is the 20% basically here to here. And in between the 10% and 20%, we have 300 dVH block. And for the next, we have again 200, but next animation is 30%. So basically, we are seeing this scene. And then we have a auto height block here, which has a UI. And then basically after that, we have 31%. So this is 30%, but this is 31 because like I showed you earlier, there's a harsh transition here. So I wanted to keep it behind this 2D UI so we can get the smooth transition when we scroll down. This is basically the logic of the anchors. So anchors allows you to align your UI with your animation. So for example, what happens if we set this to 45 and we have like a 200 dVH here, but this text is just a relative text, which is scrollable. And if we go into a preview, you'll see that there's an issue because this is our first text. Everything works perfectly fine. We see the phone, we scroll down, but this text should be appearing with the screen, on top of the screen. But right now, it's not aligned. So we can see the transition and we can see the next scene. It says action button or basically do more, wait less, but we are seeing the camera. So let's go ahead and take this back to 30 and check the animation. Everything works perfectly fine. And then we see the screen and also the text. So this is perfectly aligned. And as you can see, we have the UI here, basically covering the transition. So, which means that the anchors basically matches your UI with your animation. And another example would be, or the logic of the anchor is this. So this text, this block is set to 200 dVH, but if we make this 500 dVH, which means 5 times of your screen, and this is still set to 220 to 30, if we check the preview, you'll see that there's an issue again. And we can see that the text is coming up, but the animation is way too long. So, which means that the longer your block, longer your animation. So, just like the previous explained logic, which means that we have 20%, and 30%, but we have 500 DVH. Your timeline for the animation really depends on your block. Or maybe let's just bring this back to explain better. So this is still 200, but we can basically make this 25, which will be 20 to 25. But as you remember, this is set to uh 200, but our first block is set to 300. It used to be same because this one was 10%. This one, like the timeline between is 10%, and it was 10% here as well. And it was 300 DVH to 300 DVH as well. But currently it is set to 20 to 25. And let's make this same as the previous one, and we'll see the difference. So let's go into preview, and the animation is still perfectly aligned, or the amount of time that we gave to the animation is more than enough. And then we scroll down, but the animation is way too slow because we just basically gave the same amount of time to shorter amount of animation. And another logic of the anchor is this. So let's say we have a long text here, and let's change this text to lorem ipsum, which is really long. And we need to remove the height, and you'll see. So here's the first issue. Right now, we are seeing this text as like 150 dBH or 120 dBH because it covers one screen and it goes down again. We have like 1.5 screens of height here. But if we go onto mobile, you'll see that this is way too long, more than 150 dBH. So basically, we can make it aligned with this. So this is still set to 20 to 30%, but this has no certain height. The only height is basically this text, but even if we do this, we can increase the size of this block. So which means that this is not reliable in terms of the height, which causes some issue with mobile. So let's go on to preview. We'll see it takes one scroll to finish this off, but for the mobile, it means that like 4 or 5 scrolls. So this means that the anchors allows you to align your text or your blocks with no height, which is basically, we can tell, like relative with your scene. And that's it. This is how to use anchor, or what the anchors are. See you in the next one. Peace.